I'd like to introduce John O'Brien. John is Executive Director of the Masters in Financial Engineering and also adjunct professor here at Berkeley. He has created and is currently teaching the Success and Failure in Financial Innovation course. Please welcome John.
Thank you, Linda. And it is a pleasure to have all of you here today, and our panelists especially. This program at Berkeley began in 2001, our financial engineering master's program. So this year we graduate our 5th class. And so I hope you will all be around in roughly St. Patrick's Day, March 17th. We try to have it each year, but can't always do it right on that date. But we're going to have a big party this year celebrating the 5th class. Now, that's kind of shows, I think, how young a profession financial engineering is in terms of being identified as a profession. As you will see from many of us here, it probably has in fact been going on for more than 5 years, or we are older than we look. Myself, I got involved in 1965. Long before anybody called this financial engineering, and I think you'll hear some very interesting stories from others here on the panel as to how they got involved. But if some of you, and I suspect it's true, some of you, if not many of you, are not at all familiar with financial engineering, so I wanted to just say a couple of words about what it is. And in some sense, I think it's easy to think about financial engineering if you thought about electrical engineering or chemical engineering as opposed to chemistry and physics. You know, physics people think about field equations, and electrical engineers think about toasters and iPods. And in financial engineering, we have financial science, which are people who think about field theory and all kinds of derivative equations and their solutions. And then we have financial engineers, which have to think a little about that, but we have to think and develop things that are more like the toasters and the iPods. Now, we haven't yet developed things that are quite as popular as an iPod or quite as universally used as a toaster. But we have developed some things, and probably the very first thing to be seen as a product of financial engineering was created by the bank right here in San Francisco, the successor name of which is Barclays, and one of these folks here is going to represent Barclays. But that was something called an index fund. And in 1992, Wells Fargo Bank, the predecessor of Barclays, created a fund that just had everything in it, and people thought it was ridiculous, silly, and many people thought it was un-American because it didn't attempt to beat the index, it simply attempted to match it. So the very first, I think, invention, if you will, in financial engineering was the index fund. And I'm sure our panelists will tell you about other interesting things that have been credited and invented and are useful to people in financial engineering. And in my own class here at Berkeley, we try to look ahead and see what could financial engineering possibly do for people down the road. And we're coming up with some rather interesting things, and maybe 5 years from now we'll be back to tell you what the equivalent of a toaster is in financial engineering. But for now, we'll get down to how a number of very interesting people got involved, and maybe I'll give you some ideas about how you might want to become involved. And to get the panel organized and going, I'm going to introduce one of the fellows who is a financial engineer. He did come up, like many financial engineers, through the physical sciences, and in many cases came through rocket science. And rocket scientist was the name given to financial engineers initially. And Domingo is a rocket scientist. He was an aeronautical engineering PhD from Stanford, and then went on to the aerospace industry. And he tells me just a short while ago that he decided it was time to get out of that industry when Gorbachev came into the Soviet Union and was going to pacify the world. And Domingo felt that budgets would be shrinking and there's probably a more interesting and more profitable place to go. And so he became a financial engineer, and we're very happy to have him here.
Thanks, John. Thank you. So welcome, everybody. I will make this very short and then start the ball rolling by tossing some questions. And then the idea is that we will have a lively interaction with you. You ask whatever you like about the field of financial engineering and mathematical finance and so on, and we'll try to be helpful in telling you what we know about it. You may wonder about the word quant. Why is that we use that word? It's a hybrid sort of word, and it should tell you that we don't quite have a solidified way of defining what a quant does, and that is why we have that word. There was a revolution that happened in around 1973 or so, when some very bright people who then went on to win the Nobel Prize formulated some simple statements from which you could construct a framework for doing quantitative finance. For those of you who come from other areas of activities such as physics or other areas of engineering, you work with conservation principles and principles that allow you to build the quantitative structure that you use to solve problems. Well, that quantitative structure became solidified right around 1972, 1973. From then on, this new mathematical framework and quantitative framework started to emerge that created a need for people who were highly qualified in quantitative techniques. Since then, probably, I don't know, we have been using this word quant. I think today you could probably identify that with financial engineering, but the quant is a very hardcore financial engineer. That's the way we tend to see a quant in the finance industry. Yeah? So what I'll do next is just say a few words about myself, and then we'll just go down the panel, and everyone will just introduce themselves a little bit. Like John said, I got going in the aerospace industry in the early 80s. I worked at NASA for about 10 years. Then I decided to go back to school. I came to Berkeley, did an MBA with a focus in finance. That was around 1990, I think it was. And then I made my debut with LOR Geschke Bock, a financial engineering firm at the time very highly regarded in the marketplace. Shortly after that, I moved to New York, where I worked for Bankers Trust in mergers and acquisitions and making mathematical models that would tell you when a particular merger would happen, roughly, an approximation. But we managed to have some interesting success stories about the probability that, predicting the probability that mergers would happen. Then I came back to California, worked for software industries, and since over the last 8 years or so, I've been working sort of independently as a consultant, and now I am a retained quantitative advisor for Hypo-Vereinsbank Global Derivatives, a very large European house in the derivative industry. Yeah, I also teach the quantitative and computational finance series at the MFE program at Berkeley. All right, so perhaps you, Matt, can say a few words about yourself.
Sure. Hello. My name is Matthew O'Hara. I work at Barclays Global Investors. I work in the U.S. Fixed Income Research Group. So my time is spent doing econometric studies, time series studies. We also do risk modeling, and I can explain that to anyone who's curious afterwards. My background is in mechanical engineering. I did my graduate work at Berkeley. Worked in the disk drive industry for a company called Maxtor. Maybe you've heard of that, maybe. Anyway, then I worked very briefly for about 2 years at a software startup in south of Market in the heyday of the internet. And then I decided to come back to school here at Berkeley and take the Master's in Financial Engineering program. And the motivation for me was I liked the work that I did initially in engineering, but I wanted something that had more growth potential. And financial engineering looked like it had that. And since graduating in 2003, I've been at Barclays, and I've done a variety of different things, but so far I enjoy it.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Lisa Friedman, and I'm originally from Russia, where I studied at the Financial Academy, which didn't really quite have a financial engineering program back then. And I came to the United States in '98, and I've joined a Pacific Alternative Asset Management Company, which is a fund of hedge funds, upon graduating from my MBA, with MBA degree from Anderson Business School. And I'm very impressed by the backgrounds of my fellow panelists, and I guess my role here is to give you another alternative of what you can do with your financial engineering or quantitative skills type of degrees. And I've just gone through the job search process a couple of years ago, so I can still relate, I suppose, to what you guys are going to be going through shortly. And currently, as a second-year associate at PAMCA, I concentrate on due diligence of potential hedge funds and on monitoring of the existing hedge funds. And our risk analysis of the managers involves analyzing the underlying positions, since we get the transparency from our underlying managers. And in doing so, we apply our proprietary models, which a lot of the financial engineers at the firm are developing in-house. So I guess I could elaborate on that during the discussion.
Hi, everybody. My name is Alessia Falsarone, and I am currently an associate in the small and mid-cap strategy team in the equities department of Citigroup Global Markets. I work out of San Francisco. My background is I have an undergraduate degree in financial economics out of Bocconi University in Milan, Italy. Came to the States in '99, joined the investment banking program of Credit Suisse First Boston, worked in their offices in New York, Chicago, Tokyo, moved to California for 3 years, actually. Moved to California in 2002 to join the Master of Science degree in Financial Mathematics at Stanford University. Graduated a year later in '03, and since then I've been, again, working in basically portfolio strategies for small and mid-cap managers, and I'll take any questions later.
Okay, hi, my name is Bob Mark. So how I became a quant. I think I was born a quant. I mean, I was a kid. I'll work my way all the way back. I was a kid that actually, I grew up in the South Bronx, and two things I love, which is there's a point to the end of this. Two things I love were sports and mathematics. And that was my root in terms of what took me through. I was not particularly good in anything else but mathematics. And I worked my way through the elementary school and middle school, and I had all the right encouragement. And then I find myself in college, and I was fortunate enough to make it all the way through on scholarships and fellowships up through the PhD program. And again, that was my lovely skill. And for dumb luck, I found a professor at the University of Irvine, and I was very interested in gambling theory. And I met a guy named Ed Thorpe who was spending some time looking at investing in warrants. And so I did my doctoral dissertation with him, and he was very smart because he had me do his legwork, and he was investing, and I was doing his research. But once again, dumb luck. I find that coming out of that experience, I went to work for a bank called Hong Kong Shanghai Bank. And again, dumb luck. I'm sitting on the trading floor supporting the guys who were doing options trading. And you picture the time, there were maybe eight guys, Hong Kong Shanghai Bank, doing options trading. I'm supporting them. And one day they all get up and leave. One leaves at 9 o'clock, one leaves at 9:15, one leaves at 9:30, and they're all gone. So they had nobody to manage the options desk. So they put me on the options desk. It was great doing the quant work, but I had no idea what I was doing on the trading floor. And there was a guy sitting to my left who was a spot trader. And it was a very religious thing. An option trader, you're supposed to be playing volatility, not shading whether the market should go up. And his name was Tony. And I go, Tony, which way is the market going? Is it going up or down? So I always, I made a delta positive or negative depending upon what he told me. So after a while, I learned how to do options trading, and I ended up going to a place called Manny Hanny, manufactures Hanover Bank, where, again, I ended up on the trading floor, and they were looking. I got involved in asset liability management, and again, they were looking for somebody then to get involved in risk management, again, because I was a quant. They wanted somebody on the trading floor that can put something together in the area of risk management. So we didn't know anything about risk management then, and the only thing I knew was variance, covariance in the foreign exchange spot market, because it was the easier thing to do, and ran a what is now called a value at risk. And the foreign exchange spot trader loved technology, so what he did was he took what is now called value at risk, it was called risk measurement units then, and he ran it around the ticker. Right? I mean, so it was a very exciting thing to be able to, go out in the trading floor. And he was really crazy, but he was a good supporter. So there it was, the prices, and they're running around the ticker was the value at risk number, right? Nobody knew what it was, but, but it was, a lot of fun. And so as luck would have it, and by the way, the easiest thing to do is foreign exchange spot, foreign exchange forward, and other things are quite complicated to calculate risk. Anyway. So I was the guy that got pushed to start doing risk management on the trading room, and I began to move off to dumb luck in this career in risk management. And to make a long story short, I end up at a bank called Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce, and they're looking for a corporate treasurer and somebody to manage risk, and I ended up being a chief risk officer, a corporate treasurer. Again, dumb luck. So I'm here managing money and doing risk, which, by the way, is a perfect violation of what you should otherwise do. But anyway, that was what it was. So all my career, I think I've just nothing but dumb luck. But I think, and then I ended up on the management committee, 7-person management committee. And so what was the compelling proposition? Not that I was particularly smart about the other, but I was the quant guy sitting in the management committee, And that was the differentiating factor, and they would turn to me on things that had to do with quantitative relationships, business strategy decisions, risk return decision. So, and then I opened up a company. I had an idea for a couple entrepreneurial opportunities, did that, moved out to California, and sort of just working my quant skills. So my entire career has been around using my quant skills. So first, my little message is you got to love it. I mean, that's if I put my little story out, you got to love it. Second thing, I wouldn't worry about being, the best quants. There are a lot of people that have great experience out there that are particularly good. But if you stay with it and you're good and find your niche, find a particular business that you like and bring the quant skills and the business skills and put them together. My luck was to find the financial markets. And the third, you got to make some point of decision, research, or you want to go out and make money, or maybe a combination of the two. And I'd be happy to answer questions about that experience if you like as I go forward. Steve?
It's a hard yarn to follow, Bob. I'll agree with you certainly on one point. Dumb luck is very important in this story. My academic background was in economics, and I got into finance pretty much by dumb luck, which is that I got hired by a business school to teach finance, and I thought, well, I better get to work and learn some finance. And in fact, really, that's, I think, the role academia served for me. I taught for full-time for about 6 years, and in that time, I had a chance to pretty much do every area of finance. But just at the end of that, I got involved doing corporate finance, and I found that I really enjoyed it. It was actually kind of a funny story. I don't know, is Dave Downs still around here? Dave, no. Just retired a year ago. Just retired. Well, he was in charge of the MBA program when I first got to Cal, and they asked me to teach a corporate finance class because I just taught one at Columbia, and I went to Dave and I said, I have to be honest with you, I don't know much about corporate finance. What should I teach? And he said, why don't you teach a case course? And I said, well, I don't know anything about teaching a case course. And so he said, so I got the previous guy's cases, and then I assigned them as projects because I didn't know how to teach a case course. So we kind of, I worked them jointly with the class. And over time, I ended up discarding a lot of them. I remember we had one on dividend policy, and we used to have all sorts of speculations about why this firm had a particular dividend policy. And then one year I had a student in the evening program who actually knew someone who'd been on the board of the company. And so he called him up and said, so why did you guys pay a dividend? And they said, well, the owner of the company needed some cash. And so we paid a dividend. So anyway, I stopped teaching that case. But after about 6 years of that, I kind of characterized myself as a utility infielder in finance. And by sort of dumb luck again, fell in with a group of guys in San Francisco who were working on credit. And credit just turned out to be sort of the perfect intersection of all the things that I had been doing. It was about corporate finance. It was about markets. It was about investments. At one time I said, in fact, I couldn't think of a single area of finance that we didn't touch. We were estimating factor models and doing correlations and having a good time. And really, that's kind of been the story ever since, which is that the great thing about credit is just kind of continue to develop as an area and mature in all kinds of interesting ways. And so I fell into it in '86, and 2005, so I'm still working on credit.
Good. So, do we have any questions from the audience at this stage? Right, okay, yeah. Right, yes. So when you ask a question, I'll repeat it so that it gets recorded. So let me just toss a question here to the panel, and I'll start with the gentleman right next to me here, because I think this is a relevant question that many of you may be asking. Matt, how did the degree that you get here prepare you for what you are finding now, and how happy are you about that?
Okay, fair question. So my graduate work at Berkeley was in mechanical engineering, specifically in control theory and also fluid dynamics. So it's kind of an odd intersection. But part of the work that I did was solution to partial differential equations, numerical solutions. The MFE program has a emphasis on that, or it can have an emphasis. I took both quarters of the class that Dr. Tavella teaches. That's in numerical solutions to partial differential equations, essentially. And the second part of it was finite difference solutions, which fit in very nicely with my background. Then I did an internship at Lehman Brothers in the fixed income derivatives group in Tokyo, which was good fun. And actually, it translated over directly, and the work that I did there ended up being the basis for the thesis that I wrote. I wouldn't call it a thesis, maybe student paper for the MFE program. So all that fit together very nicely. And then after I finished school, I went to Barclays Global Investors, and we don't do any of that. So what we do is mostly econometrics. So we did have a class in econometrics, and that prepared me fairly well for that, but I've spent quite a bit of time coming up to speed on what is I would consider a vast field. But I would say that the overall finance knowledge that I acquired in the program was very useful. And so the other part of the question is, I thought about going into finance directly without going to the MFE program. And I think that I probably could have found a job somewhere, I hope. But I felt that I might have been pigeonholed a little bit based on my quantitative background. So by going to the MFE program, it gave me a much broader overview of what finance is and the different pieces and how they fit together. And so now I feel much better prepared to do different things in finance should I need to at some point later in my career. So overall, I would say it was a good experience for me.
Right. Yeah, any comments that you might want to follow up? No? Questions? Yeah, please, go ahead. The gentleman over there.
What helped you to decide the particular area where you decided later in your career?
Why asset management, for example? So I can
okay, let me, I'll repeat the question for the recording. So the question was, what is that caused you to decide to go in that particular area?
Right. So it was a little bit